Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barnard. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves. Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is J. Grant Caplan. Grant is the president of Procurigence, a managed travel consulting and conference research firm specializing in optimizing spend. He's a relationship-driven professional who finds a natural fit in a role that requires calm heads and an emphasis on hospitality. So, hi, Grant. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be together again.
Absolutely. Now, I shared around your current role that you have to be calm and you have to be good on hospitality. Tell me a little bit more about the professional journey that prepared you for this moment.
Oh boy, am I a fortunate person. I have really never had to look for a job, and I find that very odd. But I started out managing travel buying laws in the U.S. House of Representatives, working for a member of the House and then for the committee that oversaw GSA travel regulations and purchasing and so on. And then a travel agency hired me away and gave me a bank of travel agents and said, all right, go find business to fill these people's day and make sure they serve the traveler the way that the company wants them to be served. So we would do that. And I got bought away by a travel software company. And then my best client had the first ever self-booking tool for corporate travelers. So it's been a really fun journey. We had a mid-office quality control product. And I understood through doing that how all this works and how the buying goes and how it's really, we're really buying a service that's sold like a commodity.
Yes.
And so learning about how that commodity and yield management went allowed a lot of capabilities in today's job. And eventually I was giving so much advice around selling that great booking tool and quality control tool that the advice was worth the money. And at a certain moment, at a certain hour, which I remember distinctly in my head, I decided I should charge for this advice and become a consultant.
And absolutely you should, as we were saying before we went live, procurigence, intelligence, right? Putting all of that experience that you have into this. Now, it goes without saying, Grant, there's been a lot of change over the last couple of years. And especially where travel is concerned, I am positive that of all the people listening in to this episode, they are in very different stages of the transition back to, or maybe not even making changes from, travel. But if somebody is not a regular business traveler or is not responsible for managing that category of spend, they might not actually be aware of what sort of the state is in business travel. What are some of the changes that you've seen take place over the last couple of years that are still affecting business travelers and business travel spend managers now?
Well, we're seeing still a continuation of the interest on the company's part to save money by not traveling. It's a very high expense. For the longest time, business travel and entertainment was the third largest controllable expense a company could have. That's a lot of money behind labor and real estate, and those aren't even all controllable, right? So it's still a very big expense historically on the part of many companies. And when they saw during the lockdowns and after the lockdowns, we don't have to travel to be successful, they thought, okay, we're going to cut back on travel. But the travel that was cut back on, I have to give companies a lot of points. It was pretty smart in that a lot of the travel I saw going on was, what, you're going to that other office of your company for 2 hours for a meeting and then getting on a plane and coming home? Yeah. Why? And yet video conferencing wasn't developed as much and wasn't as comfortable for people. And so a lot of that has changed into um, the travel that is acceptable is selling something, right? Customer
Yeah.
facing travel, servicing a customer, right? And a lot of that business travel that we're not doing, going to our office, is now coming all together as a company meeting so that we can have a little of this, which actually enables what you and I are doing now,
Right.
because had we never met in person, this would be more difficult, and we would have less of a sense of each other, because humans need connection in order to work together and feel some sense of relationship, and business is done by relationship. It's kind of a long answer to your short question, but the state of the state right now
Yeah.
really is that meetings and events have come a lot further forward on taking the place of these little onesie twosie trips within our companies.
And that's smart, right? When you start to think about the ROI, even the personal disruption. I mean, you gave the example of someone getting on a plane, flying for a 2-hour meeting at another company location. There's a personal impact to that, a personal cost to that as well. When you think about how not only the mindset change, but the change in policy or expenditure that goes with it, how has that impacted the role of the travel manager themselves?
Well, the travel manager now is much more responsible to thinking about wellness. And wellness has been a big discussion in our industry,
Mm,
and wellness costs. So as procurement people, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, yes, we are taking care of those people, because wellness has risen up to a much more important topic across all of corporate America. This is just one of those places where it comes out. And by having a procurement plan that accounts for wellness, we understand that now travel, through wellness in travel, is helping to keep staff and somebody who's going to travel anyway. If I take better care of them than my competitor across the street that they could work for, I'm going to keep them. But that costs money, right?
yes.
So now we've changed the way we're procuring in order to make sure that we're getting more extra legroom seats on airplanes, that maybe we're making sure that the hotel has a gym, right? And
Yes.
making for yoga classes. Sometimes I even see people doing corporate apartments instead. But
Oh,
of course, I want to
interesting.
make sure that corporate apartment, because a corporate apartment's more homey, right?
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
well right there, and a washing machine if you're going to be there a long time,
Yeah.
and a kitchen so you can eat healthier food, and you'll spend maybe a little less money, so the procurement's going to be happier that way when it comes out in the way of, do we have to account for more dining and so on. And so we're seeing more of that creep in, and these all suite properties that have a kitchenette, they're becoming a little more popular.
And I can certainly appreciate that. I mean, as a traveler myself, right, you do appreciate, even when it's a very small kitchen, just to be able to keep milk in the room, right? Feels like such a perk. It doesn't take, I don't need a 4-star chef. I don't need fancy things. I'd like to be able to pop a bag of microwave popcorn and have real milk to go in my coffee instead of the little powder. Those little touches do, in fact, change. I would imagine both how the traveler feels and also how productive they're able to be on the trip.
Yes, because I can sit in I'm a road warrior myself. I traveled 30 plus times last year, all around the world for client work and for conventions and public speaking and so on. And I I like when I can stick a couple drinks and maybe a little something to eat in that little,
Yep.
even the dorm size refrigerator that is
Yes.
small, that's still better than nothing. And my expense report likes that too. And
Yeah.
so by procuring those type of services for my company, then my expense reports are a little more friendly, and I didn't spend much more at all, sometimes even less, to get that.
Yeah. Now, being a road warrior yourself, you're actually in a uniquely good position to answer the next question I have. One of the debates that has raged in procurement for years is this idea of category expertise and where it should live. So you're walking the walk.
Mhm.
You're not just advising people from a central office, you're experiencing it. You're in the airports, you're going through security, you're in the hotels, you're using the transportation. given some of these additional wellness related considerations and some of the other models, like you talked about, sort of like an apartment model as opposed to traditional hotel, has this shifted maybe the balance of the decision around whether the category expertise can truly live in-house, or whether there's some value in having a road warrior bring additional category expertise to bear on the overall travel strategy and how that fits into the wellness plan of the company?
Well, it's really kind of it's kind of that whole thing about walk a mile in my shoes,
Yes.
right? And when you're buying travel services for travelers and you don't know what their life is, how do you really know how to buy for them appropriately and keep the cost in the right place, but the
Yeah.
service in the right place? You have to do both in procurement. It's about as simple as buying a good office chair, right? You buy a bad office chair, people are going to have backaches and your
Yes.
medical bills are going to climb for your company, right? And then if you buy a good office chair, people will have a better position, their elbows will be at the right angle, and so on.
Yes.
I do that equivalent in business travel and in meetings and events. And having an expert advise you, it doesn't mean that you're less of a buyer. It means that you're
Mm,
actually more of a buyer, a smarter buyer, because really you're seeking out how do you do the best when you don't necessarily know everything. And
yeah.
to not seek advice is to intimate that you know everything. And no, none of us know everything. I don't.
No,
Do you?
definitely not.
Right? And that's why we seek to learn through podcasts like this is
Yeah.
how to be better at our jobs. Well, get expertise, get somebody to help you that can talk about having walked a mile in my shoes.
Yeah. And one of the other areas where that comes to bear, I mean, we've talked about trends, we've talked about logistics, we've talked about experience, but when it comes to travel, policy is every bit as important. And it's been interesting because as procurement has sought to become more relational internally, more relational with suppliers, we've sort of shied away from anything that even has a whiff of mandate about it. But for the sake of safety and oversight, we do need to have appropriate policy around travel. What are some of the current best practices or trends that you're seeing in the area of policy as opposed to what we've already talked about, which is sort of time on the road?
One of the most important things about policy is keeping it fresh and
Yeah.
current because as much as things change, how do you expect to have a policy that's responsive to the need, not just the need of the traveler, or in a case of a benefits policy, the need of your employees? Any policy has to be kept fresh as benefits change, as travel changes. And by the way, travel has changed a lot,
Yeah.
even in the past 2 years since travel started coming back after the lockdowns. And the policy has to be responsive to luggage costs, seat fees on
Mm,
airplanes, maybe destination fees or resort fees at hotels. When we do procurement for a company for a meeting and event, we try to get rid of that resort fee. But because we're buying in block and we have these relationships, we know how to get rid of that resort fee. But if you can't, your policy has to allow that I
yeah.
can expense that. And it's just so much extra legroom fees in airplanes for a long flight. If I'm on my laptop and somebody leans back to me in the airplane, what am I going to do? Am I going to tell the company I'm sorry I couldn't work because my
Right.
my laptop screen now just went like this with the seat in front of
And you have
me?
to lean over sideways to try to see inside it.
Or could I pay $50 and be able
Right.
to work a full flight, which is much more than I get paid per hour,
Yeah.
much better than what I get paid per hour as a cost. So the procurement exercise has to include buying those extra legroom seats and trying to get a discount and so on where you can, but allowing people to do it through policy. Policy has to be, and it only takes us a couple hours to review somebody's policy. So if you know how to do it internally, you're not up against a big battle of
Yeah.
time. You may be up against bringing in legal, bringing in HR, bringing in the different departments in your company and helping them understand what you have to do in refreshing this policy. I would think you should refresh it probably every year maybe year and a half,
Mm.
and have a culture of um, employees knowing that the most current policy is online at the company travel site or in the company booking tool. Make sure the company online booking tool and the live travel agents give a similar policy experience so that you're compliant the whole way around, but compliant in a way that brings out wellness and keeps, good retention of employees
Yeah.
and reduces medical bills and so on.
Now, one of the other things that you mentioned a minute ago that I want to actually call out and ask you about separately is meetings. So there's travel where you have individual people or small groups moving around. And then there's company wide meetings, sometimes with external people, sometimes not. How is managing meeting spend a little bit different from managing travel spend?
Yeah, we refer to it as transient travel versus MICE, meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions, right? MICE. MICE is group oriented,
Yeah.
transient travel is not, right? You're just transiting from one place to another, three people here, one person there, five people there. But once you get to 10 people, you start to get more discounts when they travel together. So in a hotel, if I'm booking 10 people for 2 nights, I get a discount beyond the published discount. And companies that have negotiated, let's say, a chain wide hotel deal, you're going to get discounts possibly beyond that
Yeah.
and get your meeting rooms included if you eat at the hotel and spend some food and beverage money. And that's why our firm, because the suppliers will actually pay us as consultants if we bring that business. We can charge the corporation nothing to do it.
Yeah.
It's because it's a different procurement all told. And
Okay.
if you buy that same service on your own without somebody helping you, the price is the same, just that the hotel gets to keep the commission that way that they would have paid an expert, right? And your travel agency can do this, although the travel agency has preferred providers, consultants generally don't. And you can do this on your own and get a rate without commission, but they're going to keep the money and you're going to pay the same without having an expert on your side.
Yeah.
Or, there's many ways to do this, and you just have to do it the way that's most comfortable for the corporation. But passing up free advice, really, I can't
Yeah.
understand that, right?
Now, our main theme for today was the idea that all travel is personal. We a
Yeah.
lot of times distinguish between personal family travel versus business travel, and there's a different tone to it. But in terms of the mindset that goes along with whether it's experience or policy or managing the expenditures, this notion that even if it's on the clock, all travel is personal. What does that sort of perspective end up meaning in practice?
All travel really is personal because if you think about it, think about your own travel. When somebody says to you, well, there's a $200 lower airfare if you will take a connection and go on some airline you've never been on, and you're going to pay for luggage because you don't have elite status on it, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to pay for that seat fee because your elite status didn't get you that seat, that extra legroom seat for free. And now you don't really know exactly how things go. So you got 3 points going against you and you're a little less comfortable. That's why travel is so personal. Staying in the hotel, another similar thing, right? The perks from getting elite status are important. So allowing you to keep your elite status within reason. We're not going to spend a lot more money to do it,
Right.
but you got to use your head and spend the money as
Yeah.
if it were your own and make it comfortable for yourself because the company is now making me leave my home and my family and my everyday routine, which people like. People are slaves to routine, right?
Yeah.
And not everybody, but still, you have to leave your comfort zone. And so that's why it becomes so personal. I want to be in a zone that is as comfortable as possible for me outside of my normal comfort
Yeah.
zone. And that helps, that's again brings right in that wellness component and makes it worth procuring to traveler comfort and traveler mental wellness and physical wellness and accommodating physical needs that people have when they would have been in their own comfort zone.
Yeah.
If they're in a wheelchair or if they need maybe to have a tea kettle in their room because tea helps them get ready to go to sleep, a chamomile tea or something like that.
Yeah.
But silly little things that seem trivial, but really make it personal and help that personal element of travel to make you more productive on the road, which is the point of business travel in the first place, and meetings.
Absolutely. Now, Grant, before we wrap, there's a tradition here at the Sourcing Hero that I want to bring you in on. We pose this pairing of questions to every guest the first time they join me. You can pick either one, and there are no wrong answers. So your choices are, what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or how would you describe heroism in a business context?
I think a sourcing hero is a lot easier to speak to because I source all day long. Corporate. When I meet sourcing heroes at conferences and when I'm doing presentations at conferences and I meet somebody really compelling, I find somebody that's able to find balance and do it without drama and be able to be responsive in that balance to the need that is met without ego, without worrying, oh my gosh, I'm not going to look smart in my company if I seek help, or if I go to a conference and try and learn something, or if I ask a question in a presentation or in a meeting with a supplier, right? Don't worry about looking stupid. You look smart when you're seeking knowledge. Yeah. And the sourcing hero in my mind is somebody who is constantly striving for better and better on multiple points of the sourcing exercise. And I'd like to think that by leading a podcast like this, you're one of those people that, to me, is a sourcing hero because you're helping me get better. So anybody that helps you get better, even if it costs some money and it's reasonable money, I think you're a sourcing hero for seeking out improvement in procurement.
Well, now that you've effectively endeared yourself to every single person listening to this episode who is virtually now an official sourcing hero, if they would like to reach out to you, to connect, to learn more, to ask a question, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, they can call you. You have my phone.
They certainly can. They can.
I know you called me, so I know you have my number. We can be found on the internet, procurigence.com. It's like the word procure, but without the E on the end, and IGENCE, Procurigence. I think it sounds easy to me because I'm a founding president. I'm not the owner. My founder came up with that name. But the internet, we have a pretty light duty social presence because we're so personal that we'd rather be personal than social media. LinkedIn, my name's on LinkedIn. It's real easy to find me there. And I'm always happy to answer questions. If somebody's just got a quick off question, call me up, email me, text me, whatever. I'm happy to do it. Should I give a number or no?
That's entirely up to you.
Oh, I'm not shy about taking messages with questions. Just, know that from Friday night to Saturday night is a Sabbath. I'm not going to answer you. So it's 281-831-4650 with a +1 in front of it. So
there you go.
That's the easiest way to find me.
And to all of my newly minted sourcing heroes listening in, I don't want to hear from Grant that anybody gave him a hard time on the phone or bothered him over the weekend. So use the phone number respectfully. Thank you for making yourself so accessible, Grant. And thank you for being with me to make this episode.
It's a pleasure. I'll be glad to do it anytime you want.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero Podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well, and always remember that you can be a hero too.